Hi everyone, today let's talk about Lulu earnings, the usual data, then we'll get into the charts, as well as my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So Lulu announced earnings and they gave weak guidance saying that the holiday season gave a strong start, but it seems to be weakening and you can see it's down almost 3% after hours. We'll take a look at it on the charts. Earnings per share $2.53, which was better than the expectation. Doesn't list it here, but you can find it. It was around $2.20. Revenue beat just by a little bit. Overall, pretty good. And this was up from the previous quarter at $1.96 or $2 per share a year earlier. So everything still looking good here for Lulu. This is a very expensive stock, but they are continuing to perform. They say they were happy with the start of the holiday season, and comparable sales were up 13%, but comparable store sales were at 9% lower than the 11.7% expected. So overall doing okay with weaker guidance. Looking at the calendars, GDP numbers for the Eurozone slightly weaker on a year-over-year basis. Initial jobless claims slightly better than expectations, but basically in line. We've been fairly flat. It did tick up from around 200,000 to this 220 level, but it's been right in the same zone for a couple of weeks now. And then Fed balance sheet actually rolled off quite a lot, about $60 billion, pretty big roll off for this week. And then looking at tomorrow, we have hourly earnings month over month. This is the big one, non-farm payrolls, private non-farm payrolls, unemployment rate expected to be 3.9, which is the same as the previous. This has ticked up pretty significantly. If it continues to rise here, we should see yields continuing to come in, but if it starts to get too high, that's going to be bearish for markets. So want it to stay in the same range, maybe a little bit higher, but not get out of control. And then you got Michigan numbers at 10 o'clock. Moving over to seasonality just for a moment. We've been talking about it every day, but just a brief look at it. We're supposed to be generally flat, kind of alternating here for the first 2 weeks of December. So we got about one more week of that before we start to tick up pretty significantly into the end of the month. Looking at max pain just for a moment, you can see basically no change here, still in the same range, maybe a little bit higher than yesterday. Max pain 454, total options 1.16 million. Put call ratio has actually dropped off pretty substantially here. That's interesting. Again, still stuck between 450 and 459. Top of the puts is up around 460 to 462. I don't think we'll get that bullish of a close, but definitely interesting. Late video here, so let's get into these charts pretty quickly. You can see the SPY has continued to remain quite resilient. It is still in this consolidation. We've been flat basically since the highs on Wednesday of last week. But you can see this is starting to tick up a little bit. We did get above the 9 EMA on that initial gap up, and then we held above it. Momentum still bearish, so that's not great. But this is starting to look a little bit like what we saw on the Dow, where we consolidated, dipped a little bit lower, and then rocketed higher over the next couple of days. It does kind of seem like that's what we're going to get at this point. After this big down candle yesterday, I thought we would see some follow through down to that 21 EMA like we did on the NASDAQ. But it just hasn't done it. We've tested these lows. We continue to test this area. Continues to hold. We're back above my level at 457.57. And you have to be bullish after a candle like today. So definitely in a choppy range. Kind of looks like we're set up to accelerate higher. Moving over to the NASDAQ, you can see we did get a big candle to the upside. Again, we had a big bear candle yesterday. We ended up not following through on that. We had bearish momentum, so we got the flip, and that really chewed me up there. So typically, I expect these to follow through a little bit more than this, but the fact that we flipped back to bullish conditions after just a really short down move, couldn't get below the low from Tuesday, and we held that 21 EMA, and you have to be back to bullish on this, unfortunately. So I did get caught on that move, and sure enough, we got a 1.4% move to the upside. You can see we have a little bit of a structure here starting to form. The question is this a pullback, lower high setup, or is this going to break out to new highs? Based on seasonality, you would expect it to break out to new highs, but obviously we need to get above these wick highs from Wednesday of last week. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, the Russell looks like a flag setup at this point. Big rally up, flagging. If we see a big break out of this flag, that would be a confirmation, and you would expect this to move pretty significantly higher. Your price target is typically the move into the flag. So if you were to give yourself that, then your price target would be all the way up around this 193.65 area. So that would be a pretty significant move from current levels. It does seem possible that does fit with seasonality as well. So definitely something to watch. Looks good here. Dow also kind of flagging, but it's expanding, not nearly as clean as the Russell. Momentum on both of these ticked back towards bullish today. So this pullback seems to be very tepid. Moving over to Lulu, this is actually kind of the price action that I was talking about, where you see consolidation, a little bit of dip lows, can't really break down, and then it starts to grind higher slowly, and then it really accelerates. So that's actually kind of what I was talking about on some of the other charts there. And that's what we saw on Lulu. Ended up being a pretty substantial move from this mid 380s area up to 464. And now you can see we are kind of topping out in this range, very close to all-time highs for Lulu. You can see we got all the way up to around 485 in November of 21. And then zooming into the 4-hour chart just for a moment, you can see that big wick down. Got all the way down to 429. This is part of why I don't really trade Lulu very much anymore. It's just super volatile. You can see we were down here around 359, pretty shortly after up to 417, back down to 388, and then after that back up to 467. So it's got a lot of volatility, not for the faint of heart. And you can see big wick down. We'll see if it has any follow through on that tomorrow. But the guidance typically means that it will have some down move in my opinion. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Apple continues to climb, did get above 193.96 on a closing basis. Tesla continues to chop in the same range, did get a slight step to bullish on the MACD, which is interesting. RSI still in that same zone. Kind of looks a little bit more bullish here. On the daily chart, we are above all the EMAs and SMAs. This could be a solid consolidation in base, and if we do get a breakout from here, that could be quite bullish here for Tesla. And honestly, it looks a little stronger than it has over the last couple of weeks. Moving over to AMD and Google, we talked about AMD yesterday taking some market share away from NVIDIA, and it didn't really play out in the price action yesterday. And then sure enough, here today, we got a massive bull candle, almost 10%, and it's up even more after hours. I think this is part of what's driving the NASDAQ higher, despite the weakness that we had seen over the last couple of days. And then looking at Alphabet here, we also got a massive candle at 5.3, big gap up, big rally back into this previous consolidation. Google showing a lot of strength. Moving over to Staples and discretionary, basically no change here. Staples continues to grind higher. You did come off of that pullback area, slight bullish candle, 0.43. Still want to see this get above that 70.85 level. Momentum continues to fade here. That's not great, but structure still intact. And then looking at discretionaries, continues to melt higher. No momentum. RSI back into overbought conditions, but overall still looks bullish. It's above 170.68. Next level, 174.76. Moving over to transports and semiconductor. Transports continuing to grind higher. Another bullish day after yesterday's gap up and basically held above that 251.77 level. Then we rallied up a little bit more. Trend is sitting up at 259, so about another $5 of potential upside. You also have these most recent highs at 255. Overall still looks good on this pretty strong up move. And then looking at semis, this is back into rally mode off of the announcement that we got yesterday. First candle 1.4, next candle 0.68, and then next candle after hours 0.34. So everything looks good. Momentum bullish, volume continues to tick up with that move. Seems like semiconductors are in a perma-bull rally at this point. Moving over to breadth, 50-day average rallied a little bit after the down candle yesterday. Still bearish momentum. RSI still broken below the SMA. Didn't engulf the candle, still in an area of resistance. Not much to say there. Moving over to the 200-day, continues to consolidate at this 62 area. Momentum continuing to fade. Does seem like we have a couple of more days. Honestly, I would say this is slowing down to pull back, but with seasonality, it might go a little bit higher. And the 200-day does have a little bit more room to the upside. 50-day average, a little bit less. Moving over to the 20-day average, I did want to get a little bit closer look at this. You can see we did have a breakdown and then a lower low on yesterday's candle and then a slight pullback. So a little bit exaggerated relative to the 50-day average. Did get into this 86.50 level and then pulled back from there. That was the peak highs here from June and July of this year. And it is pulling back a little bit more than the 50 and the 200. But the interesting thing is that we're not really seeing price action go with this pullback. So this could pull back into this area, find support and rally. We could see prices stay generally flat like we are seeing now. Moving over to the dollar just for a moment, we did get a bear candle finally. Pretty substantial one, 0.5%. Tested that 9-day moving average as well as the 200 SMA. Still bullish momentum, just looks like a pullback in my opinion. Got that initial test of the 200. pulled back, testing some support. We are right at my level, 103.64. As long as that level holds and we break higher from here, that should still be bullish for the dollar. If the dollar does continue to be bullish, that could be weaker for equities. But if it breaks down from this 21 a little bit further, then you have the possible double bottom. And then below that, I have that 102 level. Moving over to volatility, we are continuing to see this tick up. So you got the move index going higher. We got the VIX going higher, continues to hold this very slight uptrend. We now have all of the short-term EMAs consolidated on the 4-hour chart. And that is typically when we start to see a little bit of peaks to the upside. So we have some mixed signals. Most of the markets continue to look pretty strong, but the VIX showing that there's a little bit of underlying weakness, waiting to see if that plays out over the next week. Then look for that end of year rally. Moving over to my accounts, I did not do so great. I was down quite a bit of money. I was able to make some adjustments and make a little bit of money back, but not really much at all. You can see I still have this IWM position. I haven't really changed that. We'll see if I end up rolling it out tomorrow or not. Expiration for that is tomorrow. And then today I had some 390 puts. Those expired worthless, made a little money there. 398 puts for tomorrow at $1.46. Have a little bit money there, a little bit more money to be made. And then I rolled out all these calls pretty substantially to try to give myself a little bit of room. If we get an acceleration, I'm going to be in a pretty tight spot, but I do have some shares back on and some puts back on. We'll see how that plays out. But back into the bullish side just a little bit. You can see those deltas are positive once again with that massive flip from the news yesterday and AMD pushing tech higher. Let me know down in the comment section what you think of Lulu. Can they continue to be a massive outperformer, or will this holiday season spell some pullbacks for the company? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.